so many men in your life?
Well, it's not the men in your life that counts, it's the life in your men.
Mae West. In the 1930s and 40s, this busty blonde sex goddess was both revered and reviled for her overt sexuality.
She was daring, she was bold.
She used shock value to get your attention.
And Mae loved attention. By turning up the volume at a time when sex was discussed only in hushed tones, if at all, Mae West single-handedly invented the brassy, brazen, blonde bombshell.
Do you believe in love at first sight?
I don't know, but it saves an awful lot of time.
But fame and fortune came at a cost. Mae's sex appeal was an endless source of controversy.
Mae West actually was sent to jail for 10 days.
And they permitted her to wear her own silk underwear.
I wonder if they had stripes. On this episode of Mysteries and Scandals, we'll examine how Mae West's sassy, sexy image made her the highest paid woman in Hollywood, but eventually left her a sad parody of herself.
She had become camp because she was too old.
The whole idea of her playing a sex symbol in her 80s is pretty ludicrous anyway.
We'll also address the persistent rumor that Mae West was, in reality, a guy in drag.
And I've gotten this from so many people saying, was she a man?
Well, wouldn't that be a kick in the pants? I'm A.J. Benza. Join me as we uncover the woman behind the image and examine the allure of one of the world's greatest sex symbols, Mae West. Mae West was a woman way ahead of her time. In fact, Mae was speaking her mind long before the term women's liberation was even coined. But it was West's feminine charms that created her image and made her a star. With a swing of the hips or a roll of the eyes, Mae West could put a sexy spin on just about anything. Audiences loved her, and for more than 50 years, Mae West was a bona fide star. But it all began for this bawdy blonde back in Brooklyn, New York.
Like many Hollywood divas, Mae was always cagey about her real age. According to biographer Emily Leiter, August 7th, 1893 is Mae's most likely birthday.
Well, there's no birth certificate for Mae West. She was the second child in the family. She had a baby sister who died when she was an infant.
Mae's mother, Matilda, was a corset model, while her father, Batlin Jack West, was a bare-knuckle boxer, among other things.
One of the jobs that he had was he rented horses and carriages, and he used to take her to the stable. Another all-male enclave, and she loved to hang out in places where there were very few or no other women.
So Mae learned early on how to flirt with the fellas, and this was even encouraged by her mother, who became the dominant influence in the future star's life.
Her mother was the reverse of the stereotypic mother whose dream is to see her daughter settle down with a nice, stable guy. What Mae was destined for was a stage career.
Collector and historian Jack Allen.
That may be seen as a disadvantageous contribution to her daughter's life because she never had really a meaningful attachment in her whole life. Her relationships seemed to be short-lived. And she never really got really close to men.
Except, of course, in the sack. The budding siren allegedly lost her virginity at the tender age of 13, but that wasn't her first steamy encounter. Record producer Ian Whitcomb explains.
I said, Miss West, do you remember your first sexual experience? And she said, oh, yeah, God, how could I forget it? She said, well, it was a dream I had, and a bear appeared in the dream, a big bear, and he impregnated me. I said, it must have been really terrible. What a terrible experience to have it. How old were you? About 12? How awful. It was wonderful. So she loved this experience with the bear.
Mae, you animal. But of course, sex wasn't all Mae had on her mind. West wanted to be famous, and by age 20, she'd become a popular young starlet on the vaudeville circuit. Entertainment columnist Kevin Thomas knew Miss West.
She grew up to be quite a sexy young lady, and people responded to that, and so clearly she started developing that.
Director Herbert Kenwith was also a friend of West.
She went to Harlem, I think, at least every weekend for many, many years. She learned a lot about her dancing up at Harlem.
She did a mean shimmy, and she actually had some parts on Broadway where she created riots with her shimmy.
But Mae West wasn't just some run-of-the-mill exotic dancer.
She started to write her own sketches, and from that she went to writing plays.
But the theater world wasn't ready for this act.
Up next, Mae West conquers Broadway, but Mae's sexy and sassy stage act gets her thrown in the clink. And still ahead, Mae heads west to Hollywood, a town where bad girls don't go to jail, they get movie contracts. By 1926, 33-year-old Mae West was a popular star in the vaudeville circuit, but Mae decided it was time to tackle Broadway. West wrote a play boldly entitled Sex. Finally, Mae was able to marry her two great loves, the stage and, well, sex.
Sex was about a prostitute played by Mae West. Mae wore extremely revealing, clinging costumes. She sang and danced Honey, Let Your Drawers Hang Low.
Mae West out-Madonna'd Madonna 70 years ago.
Sex was a hit. Well, isn't it always? And the play ran for almost a year.
But West had been warned by police about her seductive on-stage antics. Sensing a publicity opportunity, Mae sashayed on with the show.
The end of the first act ended, she was under covers in a bed with a sailor jumping on top of her. And as soon as that happened, all the whistles blew and the police came down, took her off stage in front of the audience and booked her into jail.
After a highly publicized trial, Mae West was convicted for indecency and sentenced to 10 days in jail. Mae only served 8 days with time off for good behavior. Boy, did she fool him, because in no time, Mae and her manager were shaking up Broadway again.
She and Timony got an idea of putting on a gay play. Mind you, this is 1926. They went down to Greenwich Village and they hired a bunch of drag actors.
Mae's play, The Drag, never made it to Broadway, but throughout her life and career, Mae would have close ties to the drag world, which caused some to question whether Mae herself was really a guy in a skirt.
I think this story got about because so many drag acts copied Mae West. My homosexual friends would say to me, oh, Mae West is a man, isn't she? I mean, this was an extraordinary myth that went around.
I know for a fact that she wasn't. Because in the mornings when I stayed there, she couldn't get her hands behind her to hook up her bra. So I would come in and she'd stand in front of a mirror and I could see her. And we'd put the bra on and hook it together and then she'd lift herself up into it. But no, that was a woman.
Another rumor put to rest, but it was no rumor that Mae's fleshy figure was not considered chic during the Roaring '20s. So out of necessity, she revived the turn-of-the-century Victorian image that better suited her shape.
She was, to put it kindly, overweight. She turned overweight into voluptuous. Unfortunately, she was not a paragon of beauty. She used all kinds of tricks of the trade to try to make herself look better. Her eyes were beady, so she wore long eyelashes that would kind of stretch the length, elongate her eyes to make her more attractive. She lied about her age.
Mae was a very little lady. She was only 5 feet tall, and she wanted to be taller. So she had shoes made that were 7 inches high.
Mila Nurmi starred as 50s TV cult queen Vampira.
But you walk like the Frankenstein monster in these things. They're stiff, you know. And so she'd go, roll, clop, roll, clop, roll, clop, roll, clop, you know. But everything would jiggle.
And it gave her an undulating effect. And she was only doing it so that she would not trip. But the walk became a part of her image, of course.
Besides her own physical limitations, there was another force working against Mae: time. After years of notoriety on the stage, the blonde goddess was almost 40 by the time Hollywood took notice. In fact, it was a former lover who gave Mae her first taste of cinematic stardom in 1932.
Mae came out to Hollywood in the early 30s as a favor to George Raft to do a small part in a movie called Night After Night.
Oh, honey, how's business?
Fine.
Been insulted lately?
Goodness, what beautiful diamonds.
Goodness has nothing to do with it, dearie.
It's not a starring role. It's a supporting role. But she, as George Raft said, she stole everything but the camera.
Mae West was an immediate sensation in Hollywood, but her rise to the top was not without hardship. Still ahead, Mae becomes obsessed with the spirit world, but West's allies in the afterlife weren't going to protect her from the censorship demons lurking in the dark. By the early 1930s, Mae West was a hot commodity in Hollywood. It was the height of the Great Depression, and cash-strapped Paramount Studios was in desperate need of a hit film. Studio chief Adolph Zucker thought Mae West might just be his girl, but this diamond-clad dynamo wasn't going to come cheap.
Author and columnist Rona Barrett.
When she came to Hollywood, though, she had a list of all the things that she wanted, and either you gave it to her or that was it.
She had a deal with Adolph Zucker. She asked him what he was making, and he was making, I think, $100,000 a year. So she says, I won't do the film unless I get $101,000.
She Done 'Em Wrong marked Mae's first starring role for Paramount. Her leading man was another up-and-coming icon.
She always regaled us about how she was the one who discovered Cary Grant. Walking on the lot one day, and she suddenly sees this big hunk walk by, and she said, oh, good looking. I want you. You're my next leading guy. You got it?
Mae's embellished story aside, She Done 'Em Wrong became one of the biggest hits of 1933, making Cary Grant and Mae West full-fledged movie stars. But Mae's contentment was subdued by the fact that her mother, Matilda, died just before production began on Mae's breakout role.
She would have given anything to have had her mother know about her enormous, sensational stardom and success in Hollywood. But she took comfort in her belief that you could communicate with the departed.
Ah, you have a wonderful future.
And she always said to me, and I will come back, Herbert.
I see a man in your life.
What, only one?
She felt that there just had to be an afterlife because, all this work, it shouldn't just kind of fade away just because she died.
But Mae wasn't checking out anytime soon. By 1935, her raw sex appeal had made West the highest paid woman in Hollywood, and the success of her films literally saved Paramount Studios. But West's image made her an outsider on the Hollywood social scene.
Every feminine eye follows her dazzling gown. Every masculine eye, oh well, must we go into that?
She was never on the A-list in Hollywood. A lot of the stars were quite condescending in their views.
Her idea of a good time was to go out to the fight through the tracks. She very rarely went to nightclubs. I mean, she didn't like smoke. She didn't like booze.
West might have played it straight in real life, but to her legion of fans, Mae was sexy, a swinger, and most of all, single. Or was she?
She said that she had never been married. Well, in 1935, a WPA worker in Wisconsin found her marriage license.
Mae West obviously was trying to keep her childhood marriage a secret as long as possible, especially because no real divorce had ever actually happened to Frank Wallace. And it was inevitable that when she became famous and rich, he would rear his ugly head, and it happened.
Mae feared the discovery of her short-lived teenage marriage to actor Frank Wallace would sink her sex symbol image. But that scandal was nothing compared to the career damage that was slowly being inflicted by the Hays Commission and its infamous production code.
One of the basic precepts of the Hays Code was that you only have sex in the context of a marriage. Well, this is a kiss of death for Mae West because she never played a wife.
Boss, I didn't call it I'm No Angel for nothing.
Mae West was never actually dirty, never actually showed nipples and things like that, whereas Clara Bow did. Mae West did it by suggestion, by art.
But the censors could care less about art. They put the heat on Paramount to make Mae turn down the heat on screen. All of a sudden, the studio's savior had become a liability.
And little by little, more and more, what she was saying was being cut. The power of what she was trying to say, the points that she was trying to make in her stories was weakened, watered down by the censorship. So by the time 1937 rolled around, she was rendered almost powerless in movies, and she was fired.
So only 2 years after being Hollywood's highest paid actress, Mae was out on a satin-covered keister.
Mae was now pushing 50, and Hollywood had no room for an aging sex kitten. By now, you've probably already figured out that Mae was not one to go out quietly. By the 1950s, Hollywood was a very different town than it was when Mae West arrived in 1932. West's heyday as a sex symbol was over, way over. Times were changing. The new sex sirens had names like Russell, Mansfield, and of course, Monroe.
In her mind, there was room for only one star. There was only one sex goddess. There was only one queen, you know, and it was her. So there was no Marilyn Monroe. I mean, she said disparaging things about almost every other female star.
With her glory days behind her, the aging box office queen was quickly demoted to camp icon status. But West was a survivor. If the movies didn't want her, then Mae would just take her act on the road.
She went back to her roots. She went back to the theater, and then she did her famous nightclub act, which involved herself and a bunch of hunky men.
Reg Lewis was one of those men who Mae surrounded herself with, both on stage and off.
It was Mae West and her 8 international Adonises. That's what it was called, the Mae West Review. And basically we were replacing chorus lines with men.
Of course, Mae was a firm believer in mixing business with pleasure. See, this was one sex symbol who really loved sex.
In the 1950s, when she was doing her nightclub act, she was having her way with some of those muscle men.
She had a lot of black lovers. She was very attracted to black men. She was very attracted to muscular men.
Mae West admits in her autobiography that she had a couple of sexual episodes. One, she went 16 times with a guy, and another time 20 times. I think, judging from everything she said and from what other people have said, she had a pretty voracious appetite.
My kind of dame. Well, in between her sexual escapades, Mae worked hard to keep her flagging career alive. Believe it or not, she even recorded 4 rock and roll albums during the 50s and 60s. And then in 1970, after almost 3 decades off the screen, Hollywood finally came courting again.
The book that couldn't be written is now the motion picture that couldn't be made. Myra Breckinridge.
Mae West was excited to be making a, quote, comeback. There's no doubt that the idea of making a movie really excited her. I'm not sure Myra Breckinridge would be her dream picture.
What about studs? They don't call you the queen of the casting couch for nothing.
She felt that Raquel Welch had stolen her complete persona of sexiness from Mae West. She had a kind of paranoia. She thought that everybody had stolen from her.
Despite her insecurities about playing second fiddle to Raquel Welch, Mae was excited to be back. The problem was she was in the late 70s, an age where she could look back nostalgically on her sexy past. Instead, Mae was trying desperately to relive it, even 8 years after Myra Breckinridge, when Mae was offered what would be her final role.
I was approached to direct Sextet. I met with her and I said, I really advise you not to do it. It's a very, very bad script. And there's nothing for you to gain.
I'm the girl that works at Paramount all day and Fox all night.
By the 70s, she lost it, and she was a grotesque by that time. It was a parody of herself, and I hated to see her having to go through these motions.
She said, I want to work. I want to do something. And this was the sole reason for her doing it.
But it was obvious that time had long caught up with the aged sex symbol. Unable to remember dialogue, she had to be fed her lines through an earphone.
There was a weather plane that flew over the stage and was giving traffic directions. And of course it came into her earphone. She was saying, oh, I love your lips, I love your body, I love your face. And she's going on, she's in traffic on Sunset, is back to La Brea. And she wasn't really aware of what she was saying.
Sadly, the joke was on Mae. But it would be no laughing matter when the critics panned Sextet and told Mae point blank that she'd been in the game too long.
Ego was a very important thing with Mae West. And then all of a sudden, this one film was not acceptable. I think this is what really hurt her, and that basically, I think, led to her weakening, and then her first stroke, and then she had a follow-on stroke, and then finally her death.
On November 22nd, 1980, Mae West passed away at the age of 87.
She made only 13 films, but the remarkable legend she leaves behind will surely never die.
With the passing of a great era, of a great woman, a woman who would never be again. There was no imitations that could compare to the real thing.
She exemplifies a woman in power, absolutely in charge of her life and of every situation that you see her in.
I think Mae West was an original. She was a groundbreaker. She was a trendsetter. She set out to change the world. She thought she had better ideas, a better view, and no one's proved her wrong.
Nobody summed up Mae West's life better than Mae herself, who once said, "When I'm good, I'm very good, but when I'm bad, I'm better." I'm A.J. Benza. Join me the next time our paths cross in a state of mind called Hollywood.